That was Michael Anthony, okay? 100% dedicated, never did anything to hurt those guys, and they tried to hurt him again and again and again.
Behind Van Halen's legendary sound, the explosive guitar, the wild stage presence, and the infamous conflict stood Michael Anthony. He was the quiet, powerful force who held it all together, making sacrifices few fans ever knew. This isn't just a story about bass lines and backing vocals. It's about a loyalty tested, credit stolen, and a final betrayal discovered not with a phone call, but on the internet. In this untold chapter of rock history, we'll explore how Anthony's low-end rhythm carried the band even when the spotlight consistently passed him by. One critical moment changed everything, and it didn't happen on a concert stage. Get ready? Because the full story might completely change your perspective on Van Halen. Michael Anthony's early life was deeply musical. Thanks to his father, Walter Sobolewski, a trumpet player. His father's passion for music made a lasting impression, filling the family home with the sounds of practice and performance. This exposure to live music laid the groundwork for Michael's own interest in instruments and performing. Following in his father's footsteps, Anthony began playing the trumpet in school. When his family moved to Southern California in the mid-1960s, he joined the marching band at Dana Junior High School. Structured environment helped him develop his musical skills and introduced him to the discipline of group performance. At 13, Anthony shifted his focus from the trumpet to rock music. Wanting to stand out from his friends, most of whom played guitar or drums, he chose the bass. A friend, Mike Hershey, lent him a Fender Mustang guitar, which Anthony ingeniously converted into a bass by removing 2 strings. This period was a crucial step in his musical journey as he committed fully to mastering the instrument. Pressed by his son's dedication, his father bought him a Fender Precision bass copy and a Gibson amplifier, providing him with the tools needed for serious growth. Anthony found inspiration in bass legends like Jack Bruce of Cream, John Paul Jones of Led Zeppelin, and Harvey Brooks of Electric Flag. Though naturally left-handed, he taught himself to play right-handed, a testament to his flexibility and unique approach. His consistent practice and early influences gave him a strong technical foundation and a sharp musical ear, which would become essential during his time in Van Halen as his skills sharpened. Fate began to orchestrate a meeting that would alter rock history forever. In the early 1970s, Michael Anthony became a fixture in the Southern California music scene. He performed with several local bands before finding his place in a power trio called Snake. The group, which blended hard rock and blues, featured Anthony on bass and lead vocals. Snake mostly played covers, but also wrote original material, giving Anthony a chance to refine his performance skills in front of live audiences. The band frequently played school dances, clubs, and local festivals, building a modest following in the Pasadena and Arcadia areas. During this time, Anthony's ambition to make music a career solidified. The local music circuit was a vital networking hub. It wasn't long before Snake crossed paths with another band on the rise, Mammoth, featuring brothers Alex and Eddie Van Halen. The two groups often played the same venues. One night at Pasadena High School, Mammoth's PA system failed. Anthony, with a professional and generous spirit, offered them Snake's equipment so the show could go on. This gesture made a strong impression on the Van Halen brothers, planting the seed for their future collaboration. Around the same time, Mammoth was at a crossroads. Their bassist, Mark Stone, had just left, leaving a vacancy. Remembering Anthony's skills and professionalism, Eddie and Alex invited him to a jam session. The chemistry was instant and powerful. Anthony's energetic bass style and impressive backing vocals were exactly what they were looking for. His ability to lock into the rhythm and provide vocal harmonies added a new depth to the band's sound. Wasting no time, the brothers inducted him as their new bassist. Shortly after, the band changed its name from Mammoth to Van Halen to avoid confusion with another group using the same name. Its new name, suggested by David Lee Roth, marked the beginning of a new era. With David Lee Roth on vocals, Eddie on guitar, Alex on drums, and Michael on bass, the classic lineup was complete. For Anthony, Joining Van Halen was more than just a band change, it was his launchpad into an international career, with the classic Van Halen lineup established in the mid-1970s. Michael Anthony quickly proved his worth. As the band performed on the Los Angeles club circuit, particularly at legendary venues like Gotzary's and the Whiskey A Go-Go, Anthony's on-stage energy and signature high-pitched backing vocals became a defining part of their sound. These vocals provided a dynamic contrast to David Lee Roth's lead, helping to distinguish Van Halen from other rock acts. Anthony's tight, no-frills bass playing anchored Eddie Van Halen's explosive guitar work and Alex's powerful drumming, allowing the band to perform with precision while retaining its raw, aggressive edge. When Van Halen's debut album dropped in 1978, Anthony's contributions were front and center. His bass lines provided the rhythmic backbone on tracks like Runnin' with the Devil and Ain't Tackin' 'Bout Love, while his background vocals elevated anthems like Jamie's Crying and Feel Your Love Tonight. The album was a smash hit, and Anthony's harmonies were widely praised for their powerful, melodic quality. As the band's fame skyrocketed, Anthony maintained a consistent musical and personal presence, earning a reputation for being dependable and low maintenance, a stark contrast to the often volatile dynamics between the other members. Initially, Anthony was treated as an equal partner, receiving an equal share of the band's profits and participating in business decisions. However, as the band's popularity grew and internal power struggles began to emerge, the financial arrangements started to shift. Anthony's share of income and ownership rights began to shrink, favoring the Van Halen brothers and Roth. Despite this, Anthony remained loyal to the music and the band's success. He continued to tour and record through a series of multi-platinum albums from the late 1970s to the early 1980s. His professional playing and essential vocal support were instrumental in shaping the band's sound and live performances, while Eddie's guitar prowess and Roth's charisma often commanded the attention. Fans and critics slowly began to recognize Anthony as the crucial pillar of musical cohesion for one of rock's most explosive acts. By 1984, Van Halen was one of the most successful rock bands in the world. Their album 1984 was a career high, spawning hits like Jump, Panama, and Hot for Teacher. Behind the scenes, however, tensions were at an all-time high. Despite being a founding member and a key contributor to the band's signature sound, Michael Anthony was increasingly sidelined. According to former Van Halen manager Noel Monk, it was during the 1984 tour that a major financial and legal shift occurred. In his memoir, Run-In with the Devil, Monk revealed that Anthony was pressured by the other three members, Daddy Alex and David Lee Roth, into signing away all future songwriting credits and royalties. The circumstances were highly controversial. Monk claimed Anthony was presented with the agreement just hours before a concert, with his bandmates standing over him as he signed. The contract was retroactive, meaning Anthony also forfeited credit and revenue from the 1984 album itself. Despite his musical and vocal contributions, this moment marked a pivotal power shift, reducing Anthony from an equal partner to a contracted performer with no stake in the band's intellectual property. Monk said he would have advised against it, but Anthony went through with it, reportedly, to avoid confrontation and keep the tour on track. The financial consequences for Anthony were devastating and long-lasting. By signing away his rights, he lost millions in potential earnings from future licensing, reissues, and greatest hits albums. 1984 alone went on to sell over 10 million copies in the U.S., becoming one of the band's most lucrative records. For decades, Anthony would be denied songwriting credits and royalties, diminishing both his income and his legacy as a rightful contributor. He remained in the band for years, but his reduced status left him vulnerable to future disputes and lineup changes. The arrangement was deeply unjust. But Anthony kept his silence for years, maintaining a professional demeanor and avoiding public criticism of his bandmates. Eventually, in later interviews, he confirmed that he signed the documents under duress. He lamented the situation but emphasized that he did it to save the band, a cause he deeply believed in. The 1984 contract fight has become a stark example. of the internal power struggles within Van Halen and a sobering reminder of how creative and financial control can be stripped from a principal band. Member. In the years following Van Halen's peak, Michael Anthony noticed a shift in how his contributions were publicly acknowledged, especially by Eddie Van Halen. Although Anthony had been essential to the band's sound from the beginning, Eddie began to minimize his role in interviews, suggesting Anthony lacked the musical skill expected of a professional bassist. One of the most inflammatory claims came in a 2015 Billboard interview, where Eddie asserted he had to show Anthony how to play every note and accused him of a lack of initiative. These comments drew immediate backlash from fans and musicians who saw them as both unfair and historically inaccurate. Eddie's public remarks were a sharp contrast to the respect Anthony had earned over decades of flawless live performances, where he delivered tight bass lines and iconic high harmonies. In response, Anthony later stated that these criticisms were baseless. He maintained that he always learned the material on his own and that no teaching sessions with Eddie had ever occurred. Anthony pointed out that if such moments had happened, they would have been documented, reinforcing his belief that Eddie's claims were exaggerated or fabricated. Eddie's criticism was personally devastating. In retrospective interviews, Anthony described the comments as hurtful, especially coming from someone he had considered a close collaborator for decades. He called the experience emotionally draining, particularly given his unwavering loyalty to the band and his efforts to maintain harmony during turbulent times. The public statements also cast a shadow over Anthony's professional image, causing some new fans to question his abilities. Despite a long, incredible career praised by fellow musicians, while Anthony never engaged in a public feud, he admitted that the growing rift contributed to the breakdown of his relationship with Eddie. By the mid-2000s, communication between them had virtually ceased, and Anthony was quietly pushed out of the band's core operations. After Eddie's death in 2020, Anthony expressed deep regret that they never had a chance to mend their relationship, hoping for closure that never came. The divide between them remains a poignant example of how even legendary creative partnerships can be undone by ego, miscommunication, and unresolved conflict. But the tension wasn't just in the spotlight. A quiet erasure of Anthony was already underway behind the scenes. By the late 1990s, Michael Anthony's presence in Van Halen had begun to diminish in subtle but significant ways. During the recording of the 1998 album Van Halen 3, Anthony played bass on only 3 of the 11 tracks. Eddie Van Halen took over bass duties on the remaining songs, a clear sign of a shift in the band's internal dynamic. Although Anthony still appeared in promotional materials and toured with the band, his reduced studio participation raised questions among fans and insiders about his standing. This marked a turning point, as Anthony's one central role was being steadily reduced both creatively and operationally as Van Halen entered the 2000s. Anthony's visibility continued to decline. Despite being involved in early reunion talks and participating in some rehearsals, his input on recordings remained limited. When the band released the 2004 compilation album The Best of Both Worlds, Anthony did not play on the 3 new tracks. His only contribution was backing vocals. These exclusions fueled the perception that his role was being marginalized as the Van Halen brothers took tighter control of the group's musical and business direction. The highly publicized 2004 reunion tour with Sammy Hagar was Anthony's last. With Van Halen, even this reunion was fraught with tension. According to Hagar, Anthony had to agree to reduced financial compensation and a contract that treated him as a hired musician rather than a full band member. The tour was a massive success, but it did little to heal the emotional wounds. Anthony later said he tried to be professional and move on. It was clear that the band no longer considered him a vital part of its future. Meanwhile, a plan to replace Anthony was secretly being put in motion, one he wouldn't fully realize until much later. In 2006, Eddie Van Halen appointed his teenage son Wolfgang Van Halen as his direct replacement for Michael Anthony. Anthony wasn't formally notified of the decision. He learned about it through online rumors and fan speculation. Years later, he revealed in interviews that he felt blindsided and hurt. The worst part, he said, was that after decades of loyalty and contributions, he didn't even receive a phone call to inform him of the change. He was emotionally devastated, not just by losing his position in a band he had helped build from the ground up, but by the way his relationship with Eddie and Alex had deteriorated. It wasn't a decision as much as it was a quiet, painful erasure. After his departure from Van Halen, Michael Anthony reconnected with his longtime friend and former frontman, Sammy Hagar. Their musical chemistry, a product of the Van Hagar era, became the foundation for several successful collaborations. One of their first major projects was The Other Half, a touring act launched in 2005. The group, which featured Anthony and Hagar playing Van Halen hits from both the Roth and Hagar eras, was enthusiastically received by fans who felt the spirit of the original band lived on through their performances. The name The Other Half was a playful jab at their role as the often overlooked members of Van Halen. And their shows were a celebration of the music that defined a generation. In 2002, Anthony and Hagar had also joined forces in a short-lived but ambitious supergroup called Planet Us. The lineup included guitar virtuoso Joe Satriani, drummer Dean Castronovo, and at one point, Journey guitarist Neil Shan. The band recorded a few tracks, including Psycho Vertigo and Peephole, which were later released on Hagar's 2008 solo album, Cosmic Universal Fashion. Although the group never released a full album or completed a tour, it showcased Anthony's ability to work with some of rock's most accomplished musicians, a testament to his versatility and standing in the music world beyond the Van Halen brand. Surprisingly, the most successful of Anthony's post-Van Halen ventures is Chickenfoot, which he formed in 2008, teaming up with Hagar once more. The band also included the blistering talent of guitarist Joe Satriani and Red Hot Chili Peppers drummer Chad Smith. Their self-titled debut in 2009 was a critical and commercial success, debuting in the top 10 of the Billboard 200. The band's chemistry and musicianship were widely praised, and Anthony's bass playing and vocal harmonies remained an integral part of their sound. Their sophomore effort, Chickenfoot 3 2011, solidified their status as more than a side project, proving that Anthony still had plenty of creative fuel left. In 2014, Anthony and Hagar joined forces yet again in a new band called Sammy Hagar and the Circle. The lineup also featured Vic Johnson on guitar and Jason Bonham, son of Led Zeppelin's legendary drummer, on drums. The Circle's live shows were a lively, nostalgic experience, featuring a mix of Van Halen, Led Zeppelin, Montrose, and Hagar solo tracks. The band also released original music, including the album Space Between, which hit No. for on the Billboard 200 in 2019, proving their continued relevance. Through these projects, Michael Anthony has shown that his love for music is as strong as ever, and that his rock legacy extends far beyond his time with Van Halen. After Eddie Van Halen's death in 2020, fan interest and, reportedly, interest within the band's inner circle, a tribute tour to honor his legacy, was rekindled. Talks gained traction in 2021 and 2022, with drummer Alex Van Halen allegedly reaching out to former members and collaborators, including Michael Anthony and David Lee Roth. Joe Satriani was also part of the conversation as a potential guitarist. According to Satriani, serious discussions were underway to create a lineup that would celebrate the band's history, with Anthony's involvement considered crucial for authenticity. Despite the initial momentum, the tribute tour plans fell apart due to internal disagreements. A key point of contention reportedly involved David Lee Roth, who allegedly resisted certain aspects of the tribute format. According to Alex Van Halen and others close to the situation, Roth was unwilling to participate in a concert that would overtly honor Eddie's memory in the way the others envisioned. It's created significant tension and stalled all progress. The emotional weight of such a tribute, combined with unresolved issues among the members, made coordination difficult, and hopes for a cohesive event began to fade. Matters were further complicated by Alex Van Halen's health. In 2022, he reportedly suffered a back injury that made a physically demanding tour even less likely. With Roth's reluctance and Alex's health issues, the reunion was missing two of its most crucial pillars. Michael Anthony later confirmed, He had been contacted and was interested in participating, but the logistical and emotional barriers became too great to overcome. Although some parties were willing, the reunion was ultimately deemed impossible, and no official tribute tour ever took place. The cancellation of the tour denied Michael Anthony a final chance at closure with both Eddie and the band. While he had repaired some of his relationship with Wolfgang Van Halen, the unresolved grievances with David Lee Roth and Alex Van Halen remained. This outcome was a stark reminder of how deeply fractured the Van Halen family had become. Fans who had held out hope to see Anthony back on stage with the surviving members were ultimately disappointed by the deferred plans, which marked the end of any realistic possibility for a full-circle moment. The dream of a proper Van Halen farewell, with all key figures united, quietly faded into silence. Valerie Bertinelli, actress and Eddie Van Halen's ex-wife, has publicly voiced her strong opposition to any biopic about the guitarist or the band. In a 2023 interview, Bertinelli revealed that she had explicitly told her son, Wolfgang Van Halen, to make sure I'm dead before allowing such a film to happen. Her reason is a desire to protect the integrity of Eddie's memory and avoid any dramatized version of his complex life. She is concerned that Hollywood would distort key aspects of his personality, musical journey, and struggles with addiction, which she believes should not be sensationalized for entertainment. Bertinelli's resistance is rooted in deeply personal experiences. As someone who was married to Eddie from 1981 to 2007 and shared a son with him, she witnessed his highs and lows firsthand. She has spoken candidly about their difficult moments, particularly Eddie's battle with substance abuse and the toll it took on their relationship and family. For Valerie, the idea of watching those moments fictionalized on screen, even with artistic intent, would be emotionally overwhelming. While she joked that Selena Gomez could play her in a movie, she quickly added that she hoped the singer would decline if ever asked. This protective stance also aligns with Wolfgang Van Halen's own career and public image. As a musician, carrying the weight of his father's legacy while forging his own path, Wolfgang has often spoken out against the pressure of constant comparisons. He has also criticized those who shamelessly use his father's name or legacy for personal gain. Wolfgang has consistently maintained that honoring Eddie should be done through music, not dramatized movies or public spectacles. This stance confirms his mother's position, showing that the family is united in preserving Eddie's dignity. What truly motivates Bertinelli is more than just suspicion of the industry. The groundbreaking fame, intense personal conflicts, and tragic loss of Eddie are still very raw for the family. Valerie has said the family is still reeling from his death in 2020, and a biopic risks reopening wounds that have barely begun to heal. Her position is a powerful reminder that these histories are not just stories for entertainment. They belong to real people and grieving families. But while Valerie protects the past, Wolfgang is quietly shaping what the future might look like. Wolfgang Van Halen has become a key figure in shaping the public understanding of his father's legacy in the modern era. Through interviews and social media, Wolfgang has been critical of what he sees as toxic fan culture, particularly fans who weaponize nostalgia or demand a return to the classic Van Halen lineup. He has expressed frustration with those who ignore the emotional realities of the band's history, especially following his father's death. Instead of romanticizing a reunion or tribute, Wolfgang consistently advocates for honoring his father's memory through authenticity and respect, not fan service. Beyond his public commentary, Wolfgang has confirmed the existence of a vast archive of unreleased Van Halen recordings, sparking speculation about potential posthumous releases. Guitarist Steve Lukather, a close friend of Eddie's, revealed in 2023 that he and Alex Van Halen had been exploring Eddie's vault of recordings. Lukather suggested there might be enough material for future projects, but emphasized that any decisions would be made carefully and with the family's blessing. Although fan interest in a revival project is high, Wolfgang has made it clear that anything of that nature would require delicate handling. He has explicitly stated that there are no plans at the moment for a new Van Halen album or tour. and the band can't exist without my dad. Wolfgang seems determined not to commercialize his father's legacy. His stewardship has been cautious, focused on preserving Eddie's integrity. Rumors about a tribute or revival haven't entirely gone away. Joe Satriani has mentioned early discussions involving former band members and collaborators, but nothing concrete has surfaced. For now, Wolfgang is concentrating on his own musical path with his band, Mammoth WVH, where he writes, records, and performs everything himself. While the future of the Van Halen name is uncertain, it is clear Wolfgang will ensure any endeavor, whether archival or celebratory, is undertaken on the terms of musical greatness and emotional honesty.